Hey, buddy.
Billy,
Hey, how are you?
good man. How are you?
Good. Let me get situated here.
Right on.
All right.
Well, cool. Thank you, man, for taking some time here to join us in Vancouver,
Yeah,
Canada.
thank you for supporting.
Yeah, of course. When Shauna reached out, it was probably a couple months ago. I guess right before your album came out, and I was like, hell yeah! As soon as he's ready, like let me know. And got the note a couple days back, and I was like, fuck yeah, man! Like literally
So,
whenever he can.
so
So,
where in Canada are you? Because I can
well,
tell by the accent.
yeah, we're Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, so we're coming up there very soon.
Oh, is that right? Okay, cool. Right on.
Yeah, we're doing a whole 5 weeks in Canada.
Oh no shit. Okay. Oh, that's great. So with the solo album, like how does that work? Because there's so many
Not with the solo
amazing
album,
players
no.
on that. Like,
No, not with the solo album, with Billy Idol.
oh, I see. Yes, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you guys played. Billy Idol played here. Was it last year or the year before? You played at the casino, and
Yeah,
that was deadly.
I don't remember any of that.
Oh, of course. It just kind of all melds into one, I guess. Eh?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Seriously, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So, well, congrats on the album. Like,
Thank you.
it's called simply the Morrison Project. What a fun project to put together. How does that logistically, how do you get that many? Because there's like Ozzy and there's Corey Taylor and there's Al from Ministry and there's like, of course, Billy and Steven and like logistically talk about that, like putting together something like that. Is it as hard and daunting as you think it would be?
Not for me, not in the slightest, no.
Really?
I need to be clear about a couple of things. First of all, I didn't know I was making an album. This all started with me messing around in my studio in my house during COVID, because what else is a creative person going to do but make music or paint or whatever it is you do? And I wasn't even finishing songs. I was making 60-second, 90-second clips of music. And it came together very organically. And I sang the songs that I sing myself here, and then started realizing that the rest, once I decided to put it all together, and I'd picked the music that I felt represented me, all of the music. And it was clear that the world didn't want to hear me singing a piano ballad or a riff that is clearly a Ministry riff. I mean, that riff that Al sings on was I've written some songs for Ministry, and it was one of the riffs that didn't get used.
Mm,
And I liked the riff. So clearly that was made for Al, and a piano ballad is not made for me. And Crack Cocaine, if you take Ozzy's voice off it, you still only hear Ozzy singing it. That's so what I wanted to do was serve the song and not my ego. Does that make sense? I
yeah,
didn't want
totally.
to sing all the songs.
Yeah.
And I'm just very lucky. I mean, everyone on that album are close friends. That I didn't go through managers or agents. They're all in my phone. I text them all anyway. Hey, how you doing? What's
Right.
going on? They've asked me to do stuff. I've asked them to do stuff. And so the answer to your question is it wasn't difficult because I'm lucky enough to have great friends. I will also say I didn't sit down and go, how many famous people can I put on this record? I,
Right.
I didn't think that. If you work in a bank, you may have the president of Chase Bank or Bank of America or Wells Fargo in your phone. Um, I just happen to work in rock and roll, so I've got Ozzy and Billy and Linda. It's just I called my friends. They said yes.
That's so cool. And of course, over the years, like through Camp Freddy, through Royal
Exactly.
Machines, like you've been in these bands with these players, like they're friends of yours.
Exactly. This album feels like a natural extension for me. Um, if you can imagine having a career where you play guitar for someone else and you form the world's biggest covers band, so you're supporting someone else, whatever song it is. Um, and I just decided once I realized I loved the music and the journey that I felt the music was taking me on, I just thought, why not? If I can get a deal that it suits me, it's very hard to do these days. Most
Mhm.
deals the artist just lose.
Yeah.
And Dennis at TLG and the people at Virgin embraced what I had to say. And then I decided, okay, well, then I'm going to put a body of work out that is me. And part of me is my whole career has been spent with all these people playing on stages with over 500 guests in Royal Machines.
Is
So
that right? Holy
yeah,
shit.
it would be silly. I felt like this album was a good balance. It would be silly to put out an album of all me singing because I have spent my career with all these great singers. And so it's really Billy Morrison and friends. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. 100%. And so talk about doing the because I did radio before podcasting. I was 15 years. I worked at the rock station here in Vancouver, the afternoon host. Um,
You have the
so
voice for it. It's a great radio voice, Todd.
oh, thank you, man. So of course I love that you also did a radio show. So talk about that. That was with Dave Navarro, right?
Well, I still have two radio shows on Sirius XM.
Oh no shit. Oh wow. Good
Yes,
for you, man.
somehow radio has become a part of my dialogue, and I mean, in England you don't listen to the radio. Now I have been here 30 years and I do understand the importance of radio here, but I never wanted to be a radio. It it just doesn't make sense to me, radio. However, Indy 1031 approached Camp Freddy when it was Camp Freddy. The Royal Machines is the same thing, we just changed our name.
Yeah,
So when it was Camp Freddy, they gave us a radio show, Camp Freddy Radio. So it was me and Matt and Dave and all of us, we rotated. And then I got asked to do Aussie Speaks on Sirius XM on Aussie's Boneyard. And that's just me and Aussie, which is always fun to listen to. And
sure.
then they asked me to do my own show. So I've got Influenced, which is a show that I came up with that I have a lot of fun doing it. So yeah, I guess I'm a radio show host as well.
And truly though, and for me anyway, it was the love of music. It wasn't like, oh, I need to get,
100%.
there's a message, there's a story I need to tell.
Oh
Like
God,
for
no.
me, it's like, it's all about the music.
Do
It's
I do I sound like one of those guys that's got a huge message?
right.
I'm just I'm just a huge fan of music, and I know music that makes the hairs stand up on my arm. That's called an emotion and a feeling for all the young kids these days.
Yeah.
And music can give you that. And so can art, and so can certain movies. And I'm a creative at heart. So anything that gives me the feels, as they say, I'm in.
Mhm.
And radio was just my radio shows now, they let me play what I want. And
Which is
so
great.
I get to push music that gives me the feels to people that maybe haven't heard it before. It's great.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I do the same thing with my podcast. Like when I initially launched, I went to like Sony and BMG and all these major labels. And, at the time, I know this is 10 years in for me now, at the time they just didn't have anything in place to compensate the artists or anything, right? They were like, well, we don't really have anything, so we'll just do this. And it was like, hey, Billy, they threw numbers at me that were like, the music industry better than most. They were like straight up. I mean, it would have cost me to play music on my podcast. So I was like, you know what?
Which
Uh,
is why I paint.
right. I want to get into that as well because you have stuff in like the U.S. Capitol, which is nuts.
Yeah, I have a piece in the US Capitol with one of the senators. I don't want to list the list, but I've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
But with art, I can actually earn a living.
Right. And that yeah, you obviously saw the what's that Metallica something about monsters. Why am I
I'm kind
blanking
of
on?
monster. Some kind
Yeah,
of monster.
yeah. So you saw like the Lars part where obviously he was selling
Lars,
the shit and all that.
I don't know Lars, but I would love for him to see my pieces because he's a huge art guy.
Yeah.
And he sold a Basquiat for a lot of money. And a lot of musicians like art because art is creative.
Sure.
Yeah, let me turn my AC off. That's gonna drive this podcast crazy. Wait there. It's all automated in this house. I can do it from my laptop.
Oh, nice.
Here we go.
And,
All right.
and and what are the similarities, do you think, between making music and creating art?
Well, I know the difference is the difference with creating art is there's no managers, agents, and bandmates telling you that's not how it goes, or we can't do that because it doesn't make financial sense. Or there's no one except you and the canvas.
Mm.
So that's the main difference. I think the similarities for me is creativity is all about keeping me out of jail. You know, I've done many interviews about my past,
Right.
and for someone like me, I need an outlet for the weird and wonderful voices and feelings that I experience every day. The frustration. I mean, we all go through it. Frustration, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, depression. These days in this climate, everyone feels this shit. And some people go and have a few drinks to ease that sense of anxiety. Well, if I have a few drinks, it turns into a lot of heroin and I get arrested. So I can't do that. And so art and music and any kind of creativity helps me do what a few drinks do for most people.
Well, that's great.
I breathe. I get these demons out. I put them on canvas. I put them in a song. I go crazy on stage. It's all exercising the demons for me.
And of course, the thing is, you got to know that.
Well, yeah, but I've been lucky. I mean, I have worked hard. Actually, tomorrow I am 29 years clean and sober,
Is that
and
right? Well,
I've
congrats. That's
worked
great.
very hard. And you don't get to 29 years clean and sober without understanding what addiction is and the kind of personality that you have.
Mm.
And once you have that understanding, you can apply it. I mean, these days I'm not sitting here desperately trying not to shoot up, but I still have an alcoholic mind and personality, and that can be applied to anything, sex, money, all kinds of addictive things. But
Mm.
once you understand what's going on, you can work out ways to expel and deal with that kind of stuff. And art and music definitely do that for me.
Mm. So is it still a day to day thing for you?
Not really, no. I
No.
mean, it's an interesting question. The reason it is a day-to-day thing because the disease of addiction and alcoholism that I have is it never goes away. It just goes to sleep.
Mm.
And if you're not vigilant and you don't keep up with basically helping other people, what I do is I try to be of service to other people, which reminds me how shit my life was 30 years ago,
Mm.
because I'm in close contact with people that are going through it right now. And so on that level, it's a day-to-day thing. But no, I don't think about it, and I don't. It's pretty. It's a no-brainer for me. I did not. I'm living in a house that I bought with art on the walls that I bought and somewhat of a career with a by the way, a top five Billboard single right
I
now.
know, man. Number four, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, it may be number three tomorrow. Who knows?
Is
It's
that
still
right?
going
Nice.
on.
Wow.
But here's
Wow.
the thing. I didn't have any of that when I was using drugs and being an idiot. So it's really a no-brainer. If I want a quality of life, it's much easier just to not do that
Yeah.
and be creative.
Yeah. The artwork behind you, probably all around your house and stuff. Which is your favorite piece, do you think?
Um, I have a couple of Bankses that are very important to me.
Mm.
This right here is a Warhol, and I have a lot of Warhols, about 13 of them. But art, everything, every piece in my house gives me a different feel and means something different to me. And so wherever I sit in my house, I get to look, as you can see, at beautiful fine art that evokes different emotions.
Hmm. Hmm. It's not about it's not about the money, I guess. I'm curious though, what's the most you've ever spent on a painting
You
or,
don't want to know.
artwork?
You don't want to know. And I wouldn't be so crass as to say it on a podcast
Yeah,
because
fair enough.
there are people watching this that, it's a house for them.
Yeah.
And what I would say is you have to realize, you have to understand my story. It was a house for me 30 years ago. I was homeless. I had
Hmm.
no home. I was living on the streets of LA. Okay.
Wow.
I had stab wounds because I'd been in a fight, all kinds of stuff. So I tell that not to glorify it, but to say it's possible for anyone. I'm sitting, like I said, I'm sitting in a house that I bought with art and a lovely car and a decent career and a hit single. And 30 years ago, I was where maybe you are watching this right now. I don't know. So it's possible.
Yeah.
It's
Turn your
possible.
life around.
Correct. But you
Yeah.
have to ask for help. You can't
And,
do it alone.
and when did you start taking music like seriously? How old were you?
Dude, I was into music when I was 10 years old. My first show was Gary Glitter, which you can't really tell people that anymore, but it was.
Right. Yeah.
And shortly after that, it was Generation X and The Clash, all the punk movement. I was in love with music. Unfortunately, at 14, someone in the music business that I was so infatuated with. Wanted my heroes, you know what I mean? They gave me heroin,
At
and so
14.
yeah, yeah, and so I got confused. My love of music got overtaken by my vision of these rock stars. By the way, most of them are dead. Johnny Thunders, Sid Vicious, you know, other than Keith Richards, who's a force of nature, most of them are dead. But I
Yeah.
didn't know that at 14. I just knew they were skinny and looked like they didn't care. And that's what I wanted because I was very sensitive.
Hmm.
So, I stumbled across heroin at 14 and my love and devotion to music got overtaken. And I came back out of that 15 years later and went straight back to music.
Wow. Dude, what a story.
Yes, yeah.
It, and how good
I'll
was
tell
it
you
to,
something. I laugh a lot of the time because all my friends, close friends, they've all got books out, and the books describe how when they were young they formed a band, and they sold a bunch of records, platinum records, made a bunch of money, and then went into heroin addiction.
right?
Right? We know all those books, all the people that have had those books out. I couldn't even get it right that way round. I couldn't get the band and make some money first. I had to get the heroin addiction first, which was really problematic, and then come out of that and start scrabbling for a career. But I've worked really hard.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you've ticked the boxes. You just did it in a
The
weird
wrong way
order.
around.
Totally right. And like, is there a book? Do you have a book?
I don't have a book, but I don't think I'm big enough to put a book out. I don't think
Oh,
many
come on,
people.
dude.
Well,
Everyone's got a story. I don't know that it's the big part. I think that there's a story to share. And
sure. If Collins or Harper's see this and call me up, we'll talk. But
yeah, we'll tag
yeah,
them.
I've got a story to rival most. Actually, people
Sure.
you have no idea. But yeah, one day maybe. I'm a bit busy right now.
Yeah,
To do a
tad,
book. Yeah.
tad. Yeah. And how good was it to get back in front of your fans and stuff to play after COVID? Like, do you remember where it was and like
Uh,
just
oh
the
damn!
feeling what it was? And
I should remember. I remember the last gig before COVID. We'd come back from Australia where COVID started, and I have a very powerful doctor friend who met me in Sydney in the hotel bar when it was all going off. There was a Chinese women's soccer team that had got it up in Perth, and they were locking it down. It was just happening. And no one was taking it seriously. And this doctor sat me down and went, dude, this is 2 years and worldwide. And so my drummer and I bought masks because if you remember, you couldn't get any masks, but we found masks. And we were
Yeah,
the only two that flew back from Australia with these masks on, you know, idols saying, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? What is this? And there we
yeah,
were for 2 years. So I don't remember the first gig back, but I remember it being a bit weird because no one had been touring, no one had been playing, and everyone was trying to figure out, are people going to come?
sure.
You know, because the panic in the world. But I remember the people did come and they had an amazing time.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, could you pick a career highlight, do you think, or is it just too hard to nail down one thing?
I mean, you can do top five. You can't nail down one thing. I mean, going back to England to play Wembley. Wembley is the uh, the big one. You play
Yeah,
Wembley,
yeah,
it's a big word. And I went back with Billy a couple of years ago and played Wembley, which felt amazing. I think playing Madison Square Gardens felt the same here. Done that a couple of times. And Rock in Rio is uh, wow, you
yeah.
know?
I heard that for whatever reason, that those crowds are so like it's almost like they're infectious, you know, like
They are
one
South
person gets to the
America.
next and the next, and suddenly like it's just
Yeah.
fucking out of control.
I'm lucky enough to have been to South America many times because I've also gone with Ozzy and Black Sabbath. And there is something special about South America. They are, and they know that. So there's this cycle of we think it's great down there and they want to be best for us. And so they go absolutely nuts for rock
Yeah,
music down there,
yeah.
which is it's so great touring down there.
Singing and dancing and
Yeah.
jumping, like the
They set
crowds
fire to
are
things.
something
I mean,
else, man.
it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool. And what do you think it is about Billy Idol's music? Like, how much do you think that having like, you know, the Rebel Yell video back in the early 80s and all that, like how much do you think that that played into his success?
I think Billy himself would say, you know, he definitely had some luck because he was coming up right when MTV came along. He was one of the very first icons on MTV.
Totally.
However, I think it's the songs. I think Billy and Steve wrote some of the most iconic songs we've ever had, and there was no one like Billy Idol. You know, he came from the punk era, so he had the danger, and everyone loves a bit of danger, but he was really good looking. And he had Steve Stevens, who is one of the greatest guitar players on the planet.
Mm,
And then they went and wrote a bunch of amazing songs, and the look and the sound plus a good song, it's a no-brainer. And he's proving it now. I mean, we still go out, we're going out, coming across your country, playing arenas.
yeah.
Now, bands can't play arenas, and he's been going however many decades. So he's an icon.
Oh, 100%. Like when I think back to those days of like Friday night videos and Good Rockin' Tonight
Yeah,
here in Canada and stuff, like it was
I,
Billy Idol, it was like Duran Duran, Hungry Like the
that's
Wolf, and like
it.
Michael Jackson's Beat It and Thriller and all those like huge videos, right? Like they were freaking superstars.
I'm not sure I've ever met someone who's gone, who do you play for? I say Billy Idol. They go, oh, I don't really like Billy Idol. Like I've never met anyone who doesn't like Billy Idol. They always smile and go, oh, and then tell me a Billy Idol story. You know, I
Totally.
remember when I was 16. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't trust anybody that doesn't like Billy Idol.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I told Shauna I'd be maybe 20, 30 minutes, but we're kicking up real close to 30. I'll probably steal you for another 10 if that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, sure. We
Okay.
can keep going.
So let's get outside of music just for a little bit then, just to kind of get to know you a little bit. Do you give a shit about the Stanley Cup finals that are happening right now? Like, what's your favorite sport to watch?
I don't even know what the Stanley Cup is.
Oh, the
What
the
sport? What
NHL,
sport is that?
yeah. NHL, hockey.
Hockey? No, don't give a shit.
No, you don't ever go to the kid. Where
No.
do you live in LA?
Yeah, I live in LA. I've been to a hockey game. I've been taken to a couple of hockey games.
Yeah.
Watching the fights is great, but I just can't follow it.
Mm,
And my sports mainly it needs to have an engine in it, two
okay,
wheels
like F1.
preferably. No, two wheels. MotoGP
Okay.
and World Superbike. I'm like a frat boy every weekend when it's season time, screaming at the TV. My father was a motorcycle racer,
Oh, no
and
way.
so and I do track and I have a beautiful bike. So motorcycle racing and also NFL.
Oh, okay, you're an NFL. Okay, so who's your team?
Huge, huge. I have three teams. I have the Raiders. Don't laugh, because when I was a junkie in England, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the only thing they were showing was, because of the time difference, was NFL. And
Okay.
the Raiders seemed like the bad guys, all in black. Their fans were
Oh yeah,
crazy.
totally.
So I like the Raiders. I like I have to like the Chargers because I live in LA.
Yeah,
And not jumping on any bandwagon, I like the Kansas City Chiefs, and I liked them before Taylor Swift got involved. I
sure.
just think Patrick Mahomes is one of the greatest. To watch him play is unbelievable. So
It's
they're my
crazy.
three teams.
Yeah. Okay. And so, did you watch that? Was it on Netflix or Disney or one of those things
Oh
where
yeah,
they had the feature on Mahomes and all that, and just it was so incredible, right? Like
very, very interesting.
very interesting. Yeah, I love that. Like as a broadcaster, producer, whatever, from radio and through podcasting and stuff, I love to see how people piece together shows using B footage, talking, having the audio talk over
Right.
things where you're not seeing the talk, and like the
Yeah,
production aspect of it is fucking like just so good, man.
yeah, and what a great subject.
Yeah, yeah, just so good. And so you say fights, are you talking like UFC fights, or are you talking like
No, I'm
boxing,
talking
or what
about
are you
your
talking?
hockey people. I've been to two games, and all I see is people like just beating each other up all the time. Which
Yeah,
which I was like, oh, look at that, they're going at it, and then but the actual game, as I was, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
fair
get
enough.
it. Al Jurgensen's a huge hockey fan. I get it. It's
Yeah.
just not on my sports.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And so, which shows are you binge watching lately, or have
Oh
you been?
boy, that's a problem. I mean, I hit shows hard.
Yeah, same.
I've probably seen all of them.
Nice.
Uh, that's my guilty pleasure. I just went back because I hadn't seen Fargo. So I just went back and did all of Fargo. But you name it, I watch them. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
any multi-season huge blockbuster, I'm in.
Have you seen? I just finished this with my family, the Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, I did actually watch that. It was a little young for me,
Yeah, a
but
bit.
but it was nice.
Yeah.
Um, the last great one was that one where the woman stalker was stalking the poor kid.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I forget. It's got a funny name. Oh, Baby Reindeer.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anything like that, I'm gonna watch.
Okay. Okay. And do you get into like the superhero movies, like the X-Men and Superman and
I do like.
Deadpool and all that?
I do. So the way I describe the movies for me, my life has been complete drama. Okay. So when I go to the movies, I want a huge, expansive vista with waterfalls and hobbits running through it, or I want to see Robert Downey Jr. blow shit up. I just want to be entertained, and I love the big screen and the hugeness of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Uh, Give me a Star Wars thing any day. I like all of that.
Yeah, yeah. That you say the Robert Downey Jr. That Iron Man movie sure set the bar. Hey, it was like, holy
Yeah,
shit. Okay, so that's what a superhero movie can be. All right.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so good. That's great. And so, if you could have a superpower, which power would you want to have? Do you think?
Oh wow. You know, I think I would, this is going to sound really touchy-feely, but I would want the power to give forgiveness
Hmm,
so that because I think forgiveness in the world would bring down the level of resentment and anger and hate that is around. So I would be Captain Forgiveness, and I could zap you, and now you have compassion.
right. And were comic books big in your world as a kid, or no?
Um, I mean, I had them, not as much as other people. I used to like the comics, the comic strip like Scooby Doo and stuff like that,
Sure.
animated TV shows. The comic books, not so much.
Hmm. All right, Billy. A couple more, and I'll wrap it up here. So, this is a strange one. I'm curious though. Do you believe that aliens have visited Earth, or maybe even live among us?
Um, well, that was an episode of the show that we just launched with me and Ozzy on YouTube, and my answer's the same. I do. I think it is incredibly conceited of the human race to imagine that we are the only intelligent life form in the galaxy.
Right.
Uh, and I think as a species, we are pretty dumb as a species. And most aliens would take one look at us and go, I ain't going there. These guys are crazy. These guys are crazy. But you know, is it Men in Black where the guy at 7-Eleven is actually an alien with five heads? I don't know about that. But yeah, I believe that other life forms have checked us out.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. You say, that we're not super smart or whatever. To paraphrase, Neil deGrasse Tyson was on. I think it was Rogan's show, maybe somebody else. It's a fairly big podcaster, and he was saying that and I don't know if this is true or not, but I mean, he's a pretty smart guy. He was saying that humans in general are just able to function. Like we're literally as like dumb as it could be, even
Yeah, I
though there's
agree.
a bunch of smart people. Essentially, we're a really stupid species.
I agree. Given all the technology and information that we have, and 90% of the planet is still struggling to get through the day for one reason or another.
Yeah,
Hunger, war, famine, you know, financial collapse, anxiety, all of that stuff I mentioned earlier, anxiety, depression, PTSD, trauma. We as a species struggle to keep going. And yet, look at what resources we have available to us or did have until we wasted them all.
right.
So, I
That's
mean,
something else, right?
it kind of makes us a little stupid.
Yeah,
And, you know, for us to think that we're the only thing out there, I mean, I think there's much higher evolved life forms out there that just leave us alone because we got nothing to offer them.
yeah, yeah. All right, last one, and this isn't a question; it's more of a story. And I know for sure you have one. So I want you to share a near death story where you're like, "Holy fuck, I could have died there."
Dude, I've got 100 of those.
Right.
I mean, I could tell you the time I was shot, or I could tell you the time that I overdosed and woke up in a trash can outside the dealer's house because they dumped my body. Or I could tell you the time that I fell off a motorcycle going 100 miles an hour because I was stoned and fell asleep and woke up because I'd ridden straight into the car in front. I've done all my lives. I have
You're
many
on 8.5, right?
8.5. I have so many near-death experiences. It's not funny.
Yeah, yeah. Most people do. That's why I ask.
Yeah.
I've probably talked to about 1,000 people on this podcast, and I've asked almost every one of them because most people do, right? Like, it takes a second to jog. Well, I don't think I do. Oh, hold on a second. Maybe yeah, that counts as
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm of the other side where I don't know which one to tell you about.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Nearly being eaten by sharks. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
No shit, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Billy,
Thanks, Todd.
for
Thank you.
taking the time here to join us. You're at Billy Morrison on Twitter. You're at Billy Morrison Official on Instagram. Do you have an official web page?
BillyMorrison.com.
Billy, yeah. Okay. And of course, that's going to have
Everything,
everything.
basically, if you Google Billy Morrison,
You'll find them.
yeah, Google is your friend.
Totally right. People that don't use Google, like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you
Yeah,
doing?
exactly.
Billy, have a great day, man. Good to talk
And
to you.
you take it easy,
We'll
buddy.
tag you when we're throwing this stuff around online.